I pulled off Route 194 into the gravel at Cross Creek Mini Storage at 20 minutes to 7 on a Tuesday morning in November. Del Fanning had called my kitchen phone the night before, and I had not been able to set that call down. Del runs the woodshop across from where our store used to be. He is not a man who calls people. He said he had come past the storage lot after dark, and one of the roll-up doors was up about 2 feet. There was a child's bicycle inside it, a small one, purple, and he was fairly sure he had heard a girl's voice. I did not sleep. I sat in Cliff's chair with my coat still on and watched the kitchen window go from black to gray. The lot was mostly fog when I got there. My son's white F-150 was backed in tight against a door on the second row, tight enough that anybody driving the front row would never see it. An orange extension cord came out from under that door and ran along the concrete to an outdoor outlet on the corner of the building. The number stenciled on the door was 114, and 6 inches off the ground, in the gap I could see the edge of a yellow quilt I made for my granddaughter the winter she was born. Ronan came around the end of the building, carrying a gallon of milk. My son is 41 years old. He had lost weight and his belt was buckled on a hole I had never seen him use. At 6:52, I walked to the back of that truck and called my daughter-in-law. Sloane picked up on the second ring, and her voice was already tired of me. "Ronan lost the house, Alma," she said. "It was his house to lose, not mine. Welcome back to Thistlegate Estate, where the overlooked finally claim what's theirs. If you're new here, subscribe and stay with me a while and tell me in the comments where you're listening from this morning. Now, let me back up because none of this started in a storage lot. My name is Alma Rutledge. I am 67 years old and I have lived in Marrow Fork in Sable County, North Carolina my entire life, except for 11 months in 1979 that are nobody's business. Cliff and I ran Rutledge's Market on Depot Street for 31 years. A corner store, 1 aisle wide in the middle and 2 along the walls, a meat case Cliff serviced himself, and a bell over the door that a person could hear from the stockroom. I wrote the price cards by hand. I can still tell you what a can of evaporated milk cost in 1994 and what we had to move it to in 1997 when the distributor changed hands. I could tell you which of our regulars would ask about it and which would just pay. That is the part of the job people misunderstand. Running a small store is not stocking shelves. It is knowing from across a room when a person is telling the truth. 31 years of that gets into you like sawdust gets into Del Fanning's clothes. We closed in 2019. The Ingalls out on the highway put in a second bank of registers, and that was that. And honestly, we were both tired. Cliff had his stroke on a Tuesday in January, 2 years back, in the driveway with the truck still running. He held on until the 2nd of March. What we owned when he died was the home place, 14 acres on Hollis Road, and a house Cliff's father framed in 1951, paid off since 1996. Not a fortune. In this county, it is the only thing most families ever have. Our son Ronan does finish, carpentry trim cabinets, stair rail, the work that gets looked at up close. He married Sloane 11 years ago. She is 38, and she is the office manager at Beckwith Realty in town, which belongs to her Uncle Hollis. They have 2 children. Junie is 9 and reads like her father never did. Whit is 6 and has asthma that gets worse in the cold. I want to be fair about Sloane because I was fair about her for a long time. She was organized in a way our family had never been. She had folders. She had a label maker. When Cliff was in the hospital in Boone, she was the one who knew which paperwork went where, and I was grateful, and I said so out loud to people. One more thing from that first year, and then I will get on with it. Every month, I sit down at the kitchen table with my bank statement and a pen, the same as I did with the store's invoices, and I go down it line by line. There is a draft on there for $31 a month to Cross Creek Mini Storage. Cliff took that unit the year we closed for the old shelving and the meat case because he could not stand to see them hauled off. He paid it out of our joint account, and I never canceled it after he died. $31, it was the last thing of his I could still pay for. I never once drove out there. I never knew which door was ours. And the last clear thing my husband said to me 3 days before he died, when his words were coming back in pieces and going again, was this: Alma, don't let anybody sign your name but you. I signed a great deal that fall. 9 of those pages I have never seen since. The first one I signed in a hospital corridor. It was the second week of January. Cliff was in the unit at Boone, and I had been at it 4 days. Sloane came up the corridor with her folder and 2 coffees. She told me that if something happened and I could not get to a bank or a doctor's office, somebody needed to be able to act for me. She said it kindly. She said her Uncle Hollis had his mother's the same way, and it had saved them a world of trouble. It was a durable power of attorney. I know that now, the way everybody knows a thing afterward. What I knew then was that my husband could not swallow, and my son was asleep in a plastic chair, and this girl had brought me a coffee. I signed it on a windowsill. After the funeral, Sloane took the paperwork. All of it. The insurance claim, the county, the pension office, the 2 accounts that had to be retitled. I did not fight her for it. There is a kind of tiredness after a funeral that people who have not had one do not believe. In May, she had my mail forwarded to Beckwith Realty. She told me over the phone after it was done, and she said it was so nothing important would sit in a box at the end of a gravel road. For a while, I got my mail in a rubber band delivered to my porch on a Thursday, and I told the ladies at church that my daughter-in-law was a blessing. It would be another 11 months before I understood what a forwarded mailbox is, actually 4. Now September of that first year, before I go on, because it matters later, and I would rather say it in its place. That September, I went down to Marcus Ivy's office on Depot Street, 2 doors from where our store used to be. Marcus did our closing on the Market Building in 1988, and he is not a fancy attorney. He is the kind who keeps a coffee can of pens. I signed a new will. Cliff's name had to come off things, and mine had to go on, and a widow signs paper for a year. That is most of what the first year is. And I signed 1 more page while I was in there because of the promise. Marcus read it to me twice, the way he does, and I put it in my pocketbook and drove home and put it away and did not mention it to a living soul. Not out of cleverness, out of shame if I am honest. It felt like accusing somebody of something they had not done yet. Then it was February, and the second thing started, and this one I felt before I could name it. Sloane began telling people I was slipping. Never unkindly. That is what made it work. She would say it the way a person mentions weather. At the church supper, she told Ruth Pardue that I had gotten turned around on the way back from Boone, which had never happened. She started calling to remind me of appointments I had already written on the calendar in the kitchen, and then calling the office to move them, and then telling me the office had moved them. In March, she canceled my ride to the eye doctor and told me I had canceled it. I had not. I had my coat on at 10 o'clock in the morning, sitting on the arm of the couch by the door, for about 40 minutes before I called and found out. Then April at the Ingalls on the highway on a Saturday with a line behind us. I had my debit card in my hand. Sloane reached over and took it out of my fingers. Not snatched, just took the way a person takes scissors out of a child's hand. Then she handed the girl at the register her own card and said to the girl, not to me, she gets turned around at the machine sometimes. I stood there in front of 9 or 10 people I had sold groceries to for 31 years, and I did not say one word. I want to be honest about why. It was not dignity. There is no sentence a woman can say standing in that line that does not come out sounding exactly like a confused old woman insisting she is not confused. That was the day I stopped being grateful. 2 weeks later, she came out to the house with a folder and a good mood and sat down at my kitchen table. She said it was time to protect the land. She said there was a 5-year rule with Medicaid and that if I ever needed care, the state would take the 14 acres. People wait too long and lose everything. She had seen it happen twice that year at the office. She had it all tabbed. She had a page marked with a green flag where my signature went. I said I would like Marcus Ivy to look at it. Something moved across her face, and then it was gone. She said Marcus was 70 years old and did wills, and this was real estate, and her Uncle Hollis did this every week. Then she said very pleasantly, "Have you changed anything with Marcus since Daddy Cliff passed?" I said, "Just the will." I have not been a liar in my life. That is the closest I have ever come to it, and I did it in my own kitchen over a plate of cookies I had put out for her. She left the folder. I did not sign it. It sat on the sideboard for 3 weeks, and then it was gone one day, and neither of us ever said a word about that either. August is when the papers started talking. The property tax bill for the Hollis Road parcel came the first week of August, and it came to me. The county mails tax bills to the owner of record, no matter where anybody has your other mail sent. I went down it line by line the way I do. Everything matched what I have paid every August since 1996, except for one line I had never seen. It said the taxes were being collected through an escrow account. It named a lender in Charlotte I had never heard of in my life. You do not put an escrow account on a house that has been paid off for 28 years. There is nothing to escrow. I called the county on a Monday morning. The woman was patient with me and read it off her screen twice. There was a deed of trust recorded against my parcel on June 21st. She could not tell me the amount over the phone, but she told me it was there, and she told me the borrower of record was Alma Rutledge. I sat at that table for a long time with the phone in my lap. Then October, and it went quiet, which was worse. Ronan stopped answering. Not all at once. First, he was on a job. Then he was on a job and would call me back. Then it was 4 days, then it was 9, and on the 10th day, I drove into town to Pettigrew Street. The house was empty. Not moved out, empty, hollowed. Through the front window, I could see the light fixture Ronan built out of the barn joists still on the ceiling. I could see the pencil marks on the door frame where he had measured the children every June. Nothing else at all. There was a notice taped to the storm door in a plastic sleeve. Substitute trustee. Foreclosure sale. A date in December and a courthouse steps address I have driven past my whole life. The neighbor 2 doors down came out in her housecoat. She told me the wife had moved out in September to her sister's over in Wilkes-Barre and that the man and the little ones had gone somewhere in the truck. I called Ronan from the curb. He picked up on the first ring, which he had not done in a month, and he said, "We're fine, Mama. Don't come looking." I drove home and called Marcus Ivy's office and got his girl because he was over in the next county until Thursday. I said, "Tell him it's about the September file." 3 days later, Del Fanning called me about a bicycle. So that is how I came to be standing in a gravel lot at 6:40 in the morning in November. My son came around a building with a gallon of milk in his hand and tried to decide whether to run. He did not run. He stopped about 10 feet from me and looked at the ground and said, "Don't go in there." I went in there. Ronan had put the shelving of our old store against the back wall to make a room out of the front half. Cliff's meat case was under a tarp. There was a folding table with an electric skillet on it, and the whole place smelled like eggs. A milk crate stood on its end with a blue inhaler and a spacer on top. On a plastic tote beside it, Junie's spiral notebook lay open to her spelling. There was an air mattress on the concrete with a yellow quilt on it and a smaller one beside it with 2 sleeping bags zipped together. Both of my grandchildren were sitting up in them looking at me. Junie said, "Grandma, are we in trouble?" I have had 2 hard mornings in my life. The 2nd of March was one. This was the other. I got them out to the truck and put the heater on for Whit because the cold gets into his chest. Then I stood at the tailgate with my son and asked him how long. 19 days. He told me it in pieces, the way a man tells you something he has been carrying by himself. He said the mortgage had gone bad in the spring, and he had not known until the notice came. Sloan handled the accounts. She had always handled the accounts. When he asked, she told him work had been thin, and this was where thin work gets a family. He said he had believed her because work had been thin. So he took every side job in the county all summer. Deck rails, a stair tread, a church nursery he did on Saturdays for nothing, and then took cash from a man in Boone to make up for it. He said he handed Sloan $180 in cash between June and August for the mortgage and envelopes, and she said she was making the payments, and there had never been a payment made at all. His voice came out flat and cheap by then, like the last inch of coffee in a pot that has been on the burner since morning. Then he said the part that took the ground out from under me. He said, "I know why you couldn't help Mama. Sloan told me back in the spring. She said you'd put the home place into a trust so it couldn't be touched and there wasn't going to be anything for us. She said you told her to tell me that because you couldn't say it to my face." My son had been sleeping on a concrete floor with his children for 19 days, 40 minutes from my house, and had not called me because he thought I had already answered. At 6:52, I called her. I have already told the beginning of it. Here is the rest. I said her name and I said, "Where do you think your children slept last night?" She did not ask which children. She did not ask where they were. She said, "Ronan lost the house, Alma. It was his house to lose, not mine." I said, "They are in a storage unit." And Sloan said, "Then he should have thought about that before he let it go." I have a filing in front of the court, and I am not going to have this conversation on a Tuesday. The filing was a separation. She had made it in September, the day after she left. Her lawyer had already put in for the children. The paper said she would be seeking primary custody as soon as she had a stable home and could show that the father did not. She had left him with 2 children and no house, and then she had gone to a judge and pointed at it. I did not go home and cry. I went home and looked for a tin. The tin is a Christmas cookie tin from about 1985 with the paint worn off the lid. What is in it is the old price cards from the store still in Cliff's rubber bands. Under those, the odds and ends of 41 years of paper. The blue-backed pages were on the bottom where I had put them in September of the year before and had not touched since. Revocation of durable power of attorney. My name. Sloan's name. Marcus Ivy's signature as the witness, and the notary's stamp and the Register of Deeds stamp on the back with a date on it, September 9th. Book 412, page 88. 14 months. I sat there and did the arithmetic twice out loud because that is what I do. September 9th of last year, and a deed of trust recorded against my land on June 21st of this one. 9 months and 12 days after the only authority she ever had over my name had been canceled and filed at the courthouse. She had signed my name to a loan with a power she did not have anymore. The next morning, I was at the Sable County Register of Deeds when they unlocked and this is the part where I found out that being right is not the same as being finished. The clerk was good to me. She pulled the parcel first. There it was on the screen deed of trust, recorded June 21st, Alma J. Rutledge as borrower, and under the signature line typed by Sloan B. Rutledge, her attorney in fact. The amount was $61,400 of. Then I gave her the book and page from the back of my blue pages, and she pulled that up too. She went quiet. She turned the screen a little away from me and called somebody over. Here is what they told me. My revocation was recorded. It was properly recorded, indexed under my name in the Powers of Attorney book, exactly where the law says to put it. But nobody had cross-indexed it against the Hollis Road parcel. So, a title search run on the property in June, the kind a closing attorney runs on, the kind that gets run correctly by people doing their jobs, would come back clean. My page had been sitting in that courthouse for 9 months in the right drawer, and it might as well have been in my tin. I said, "Then it did not do anything." The deputy register said, "No, ma'am, it did everything. It just didn't warn anybody." They had to pull the film to certify both instruments. There was a fee, and there was a wait, and I sat on the bench in that lobby with my pocketbook on my knees for an hour and 10 minutes. And at about 20 past 9, Hollis Beckwith came through the door. He had his reading glasses up on his head and a folder under his arm, pulling comparables the way he has every week of his adult life. He saw me on that bench, came over, sat down and asked after my grandbabies. I want to tell you I was smooth. I was not. I had the request slip face down on my lap with my hand flat on it. Hollis Beckwith asked me twice what brought me downtown, and both times I heard my own voice come out too high. I told him the tax bill had a line on it I did not understand, and I had come in to have somebody explain it. That was true. Every word of it was true, and it was the most dishonest thing I have ever said, and my heart went at me the whole time like I was the one who had done something. He patted my hand and said if I ever needed anything read to me, his door was open. At 10:40, the clerk called my name and put 2 certified copies in a brown envelope. I drove 2 blocks and walked up the stairs to Marcus Ivy's office and put that envelope on his desk without saying anything. Marcus read the deed of trust. Then he read my revocation. Then he read the dates on both of them again once, and then again, to be sure, the way I used to read an expiration stamp on a case of milk. He took his glasses off and said, "Alma, do you understand what she has done? This is not a family disagreement. This is a forged instrument, and it is on record." Then he asked me one question. He asked whether there was any chance she would come to me for another signature. I told him about the folder from April that she had left and taken back. He said, "Then she will." 2 days later, my telephone made the little sound it makes for a text message. It was Sloan, and it was the friendliest she had been to me all year. "Mama need you at First Carolina Savings, Thursday, 10 a.m. Quick signing. The Medicaid thing for the land notary's already booked. I'll come get you." She had picked the day, the room, and the notary. All I had to do was show up. First Carolina Savings is on Depot Street with the flag out front, 4 doors down from where our bell used to hang. I have banked there since 1981. I told Sloan not to come get me. I told her Del Fanning was bringing me in anyway for feed. I got there at 9:40. By 10, there were 11 people in that lobby. Sloan, the notary, a young woman with a nameplate and 2 pens laid out square on her desk. The branch manager, who had come out of his office because Beckwith Realty had booked the room. Hollis Beckwith with his glasses up on his head. My son in a clean shirt who had been told to come sign as a witness and had not been told what for. 2 customers at the teller windows and a man waiting on a wire transfer. And behind me, coming in at 4 minutes past, Marcus Ivy with his briefcase. With him, a detective from the Sable County Sheriff's Office Financial Crimes Unit, who had spent Wednesday afternoon reading 2 certified copies at Marcus's conference table. Sloan had a general warranty deed on the notary's desk, conveying the 14 acres on Hollis Road out of my name. She had a green flag on the signature line, the same as April. She stood up when I came in and put her hand under my elbow, which she has never once done in 11 years, and she said loud enough for the room to— "There she is. Mama will go slow." Then she said it to the notary over my head, in the voice you use about somebody who is not fully in the room. "She gets turned around with paperwork. Just tell her where to sign." I put my pocketbook on the desk and I took out a brown envelope. I said, "Before anybody signs anything, I'd like this young lady to read one date out loud." The notary looked at Sloan and then at the branch manager, and the branch manager said, "Ma'am, go ahead." The first certified copy was mine. Revocation of durable power of attorney Alma J. Rutledge, revoking every authority granted to Sloan B. Rutledge, executed and recorded in Sable County on September 9th of last year, Book 412, page 88. The notary read the date out loud. Then she stopped reading and put the paper down flat. The second certified copy was the deed of trust, recorded June 21st of this year. Borrower Alma J. Rutledge. Signed by Sloan B. Rutledge as attorney-in-fact. $61, $400, drawn against a house that has been paid off since 1996 and dispersed into an account I have never seen. Nobody in that lobby said anything for a good while. The teller stopped counting. I turned around and I looked at my daughter-in-law, and I did not raise my voice because there was no need to raise it in a room that quiet. I said, 2 mornings ago, I asked where your children slept, and you told me it was his house to lose, not mine. I put my hand flat on the second copy. I said, "Read whose name is on this one, Sloan. Then tell this room whose house it was." She said my name once. Then she said the word, "Mama," and it came apart in the middle. Hollis Beckwith took his glasses off his head and sat down in a customer chair. Here is what came of it, and I am going to say all of it plainly because I have listened to too many stories where a thing like this ends with somebody feeling lighter. The power of attorney had been dead 9 months before she used it. That does not make the loan a mistake. It makes every page she signed my name to a forged instrument. Using it to draw money makes it uttering that instrument. The district attorney charged both, along with obtaining property by false pretenses and exploitation of an older adult. That last one is what this state calls it when the person whose name gets taken is over 65. The detective walked her out through the lobby at 11:15 in front of the teller line, and Hollis Beckwith did not stand up. The lender in Charlotte moved fast once Marcus sent them a certified copy of a revocation that predated their own closing. The deed of trust was canceled of record as to me, and the 14 acres came back clean. The bank went after Sloan personally for the $61 $400, and the court put restitution and costs on top of that. The notary, who had stamped the June signature, lost her commission in 6 weeks. Beckwith Realty went in front of the Real Estate Commission in the spring, and Hollis kept his broker's license and lost most of a year to lawyers. And the filing that had my grandchildren in it did not survive contact with any of it. A woman under indictment for taking her mother-in-law's name does not walk into a district courtroom and explain why a Finnish carpenter is the unstable one. The judge gave Ronan the children in January primary with supervised visitation on the other side. From the bench, that judge said one sentence about where those children had been sleeping. I am not going to repeat it because Junie may hear this someday. There is one more thing. I did not find it until the first week of December at my kitchen table, going down my statement line by line with a pen, the way I always have. Cross Creek Mini Storage, $31, drawn on the joint account Cliff and I opened in 1981, every month without fail, including every month she had access to that account. I called the office out on 194 and asked the boy which door the Rutledge unit was, and he said 114. Cliff rented that unit for an old meat case and a set of shelves he could not stand to see hauled off. He has been dead almost 2 years. His grandchildren slept behind that door for 19 nights because he could not let go of a piece of shelving, and because the one bill that would have taken it away from them was too small for her to notice. She moved $61,400 out of my name. She left $31. They are at the home place, now the three of them, in the house Cliff's father framed in 1951. Junie has the back bedroom with the window over the pasture, and Whit is in the little one. There is a stair rail going up that Ronan is rebuilding, a spindle at a time, at night, badly because he will not do it fast. The yellow quilt is on a real bed. I washed it twice, and it still smells faintly of concrete, and I have decided I do not mind. People have asked me since whether I knew that what I was doing when I signed that page. I did not suspect one thing about that girl in September. I signed it because a man who could hardly get his words out anymore told me not to let anybody sign my name but me. I was not going to argue with him about it. That is the whole of what I did. I kept a promise to my husband and put it in a cookie tin, and 14 months later, it stood up and put my son's children in a bed. If a thing has your name on it, read it before you sign it, and keep the copy after. That is not wisdom. That is just what a woman who wrote her own price cards for 31 years has to offer. That is every bit of it, and I have not kept back a word.